Hi all, this is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. This is a special update show. We will be going over some regular stuff as we have a lot of newer listeners listening to this podcast now, and we need to bring them up to speed and up to date. So first off, I'm going to give a warning, and you will not make any sense whatsoever out of national or public speeches, tweets, or the mainstream media portal people. Trying to make sense of that will not serve you well going forward. This is a war, and in wartime we don't give our enemies opportunities to ruin plans or strategies, unless you are stupid or working for them. Speculations are not exactly helpful either. Stick to the facts known, and to our regular listeners, you are told more of what is real than any other show. Embrace it. Don't jeopardise it by asking leading questions on plans or strategies. Like I said, this is not a game, this is war. Make no mistake about it. People posting potential plans of Trump and the team on the internet is beyond stupid and completely irresponsible. You people haven't got the brains you were born with. Many put their lives on the line day after day to correct things and work out plans and strategies to end this slavery system, and all you can do is post it to get some YouTube scoop. Really? What if the reduction in force plan posted on the internet prompted the cabal to plot a new 9/11 Capitol building plot to kill the president and install Pelosi? Was it really worth posting that? You have to act more responsible than that. People's lives are on the line. Think and act different. We are in a war, not some internet popularity game, for source sake. Wake up. Do you feel safe indeed? Whilst the major leader in America flies off to have chats with a cabal criminal elite, we have a country in complete chaos. Will the portal people cover that? No. So we will. So we have some updates on the intel of what's been taking place over the last 48 hours. And then we're going to go into a couple of pieces, because it's coming up again. What is the RV and what is the wall and why it's been built. Plus Kim's letter from the Manor over the Manor World Holding Trust and the Leo Wanta issue, and a final piece by me. We'll end tonight's show. The intel. Following several indiscretions, the man from Ankle Bracelet Man, as he's more commonly known, or was, Mr. Mnuchin, out of the Treasury, and Donald Trump almost came to blows today about him trying to serve two different masters, one the president and two the Rothschilds. Mr. Mnuchin, for those who don't know, has already been fired twice by Mr. Trump in the past 2 months for several indiscretions in his position in the Treasury, like blocking the funds for the disaster relief areas of Florida, Georgia, Alabama, North and South Carolina, and also California. $105 billion project from the Manor World Holding Trust to restore all those areas impacted by the so-called storms. Mr. Mnuchin and Hillary Clinton, along with armed mercenaries from a group known as Citadel in New York, who incidentally also control the whole of the NYPD, stopped that relief taking place. Mnuchin, who apparently was picked as the latest chosen one and there are several of them, is working directly for the Rothschilds, the deep state, and the fake Chinese elders of both America and China. Neither deep states in America and China are the actual governments. I want to make that clear. So remember, when rhetoric going on in the media between the two countries, it applies to the dragon groups and the deep state, not the respective governments. Second item. This show warned about a certain general many months back, did we not, of how he would be removed, despite words to the contrary on a certain blog on the internet. Well, he did get removed, and that did take place. And the same general is now exhibiting the behaviour we knew privately many months ago, and also warned Mr. Trump accordingly. General Mattis is now ordering thugs to remove the president, as he is being misled into thinking that Mr. Trump is blocking his dinar cash-in extravaganza. Funny that, blaming Mr. Trump for it, because I don't recall them blaming Mr. Obama or Bush Jr. or Bill Clinton for blocking it, because that's how long they've been stringing people along with this fake RV. I'll have more on that later. Item 3. There is an emergency situation ongoing of horrible genocide going on in Zimbabwe, all in the name of Rothschild's lies and the so-called RV/GCR that doesn't exist. Over 4,000 people are dead due to mercenary thugs trying to get their president, who we have spoken to several times, to revalue the Zims. Like the dinar, that is not happening, folks. It's just not happening. Next item. In Mexico, the so-called pipeline explosion was directly related to the intel from last Thursday's show. The clowns are shutting down all energy supplies in some South American countries, Haiti, and also Central America, and also now Mexico. Several bomb plots were foiled, but the Mexico City one wasn't successful in preventing that tragedy. That to date has killed 66 people and 85 people are missing. These people who carry out these acts are the same people opposing the wall, like Pelosi, Schumer, Mnuchin, Hillary, Obama et al. Word of warning for the people in Canada that live around pipelines and refineries. You need to be vigilant also. The idea is to cut off oil to America completely and freeze us out and trying to force us to back down and accept their old system. We're not. All oil refineries in America are controlled by the Rothschilds-owned military, known as the United States military. No, it's not the American military, it's the Rothschilds army. Sorry. Investigations teams are being sent to Halliburton, aka Dick Cheney, over the Mexico pipeline, as it was they who built it. No surprise there. Likely with the Mossad-led Stuxnet system built by the Zionists in Israel, which was also installed in the Fukushima plant. At this point, I would advise all people in America, Canada and Mexico for that matter, to top up their cars, as not only could oil be scarce, but they may also choose to bump up the prices. Next item. Reports of CIA-2, which is the Nazi element, and the operations people there are jumping ship and quitting due to Pelosi barking out orders that are beyond insane even by CIA 2's standards. In her new position, which is the head of the Black Dragon Group for North America, which was previously held by Bush Sr. and Dick Cheney. I'm now going to read out the major announcement from Thursday and a small update of what's going on with that now. But we have full and corroborated evidence that Nancy Pelosi and others were planning a 9/11 type attack on the Capitol building during the President's State of the Union address, which she initiated last week in a bizarre letter, which was to take place on January the 29th, with the full intention, to eliminate the President and the Vice President for her to become the American President by default, aka Lyndon Johnson, by the end of this month. In a subplot, they were going to declare the blame would then be shifted onto ISIS, which is ran out of Langley 2 and Langley 3, with the intention of then to wipe out the Middle East and also stop the troop withdrawal from Syria. This is straight out of the Dick Cheney Black Dragon Handbook. Full investigations are now ongoing regarding the Capitol building plot. After Trump blocked Pelosi wasting American taxpayers' money during a government shutdown to travel to Afghanistan, then Egypt, and then somewhere else, not to meet the troops in Afghanistan. Oh no, that's the portal people, the mainstream media's lie spin. It's utter bollocks, a lot of it. She's going to liaise with the Rothschilds' private army, better known as NATO. Pelosi has still travelled to Afghanistan. She went via Reagan Airport, Washington, believed to be today, showing complete disregard for all Americans. This country is in total turmoil, and this treasonous weasel flies out of the country to get or give further instructions to NATO. It's treasonous behaviour. Her and her cohorts failed to turn up for work this week. Just let that sink in. Trump arranged the meeting and none of the Democrats turned up. She then flies out of the country instead of helping to fix what is a dire situation here, whilst 800,000 people have no pay. And she can fly out of the country for no apparent reason. Let's see if the equally treasonous media put that trip in its correct light, or will they ignore it or deny it like they are denying her trip to Puerto Rico last week to plot the Capitol building bombing issue. Didn't take place according to the media. Utter lies. Well, let's ignore party politics and ask the question. Is this trip Pelosi is making suitable or beneficial to the American people with such chaos going on? Is it suitable for a leader to make no attempt to correct the government shutdown, whereby they actually dismissed the president's offer today even before he finished his speech? Is this the way normal politicians operate? Never mind leaders. Is this what the American people want or need? If not, do something and target this treasonous and murderous piece of shit out and as far away from politics as possible. We can't allow these people amongst us. They don't care for American life. Not one of them. They're not interested in, not only Americans, not interested in anybody. And people have to start getting real, arguing over Democrats and Republicans. Trump's not a Republican, for those that don't know. He's an independent. We don't need party politics. I don't care whether you like Trump or not. He's doing his best in what is a very dangerous and nasty situation. A whole plethora of vipers and snakes, where he can't even go on his own Air Force One plane without the SSP firing missiles at it back in May, which, again, the treasonous media chose to ignore. So don't be looking for proof or validation of it from them, because you'll have a long wait, a bit like the RV people. So what is the RV? Well, for those new, here is the full explanation. A collection of currencies collected around the world, most of them stolen loot out of invaded countries or printed out by the Rothschilds' own private printing company called De La Rue, that would essentially be revalued at X times the current valuation, and other currencies, namely the Federal Reserve note, would be devalued at X times the current rate. For example, if the RV had any validity and went ahead, the talk was that the dollar would devalue between 50 and 80%. Zims, dongs and dinars, which were held in vast quantities by the cabal after they looted those countries, would increase between 3 and 10 times their current value. Most top military, mercenary groups, so-called terrorist groups, politicians and media giants were paid in dinars, not dollars, on the promise each note would pay out 3 to 10 times its current value, so making them all multimillionaires overnight. This is what is stopping the authorities, or so-called authorities, moving, as they all want their payouts. Except nobody appears to have gotten through their single brain cell thinking and told them A, it's not happening, B, you've been duped, and C, the current banking system cannot handle the influx of that kind and would totally collapse all banks globally within 5 minutes of it being banked. That's the reality. To pull off the RV requires a down payment that is larger than all the money spent by everyone around the world in the last 500 years or more. And assets to back it would require a number of Earths, not just one, to support it, more like 4. Now ask yourselves, is that scenario eminently possible? This is the stark reality of what people are promoting on the internet. 3 to 4 Earths of assets to support it, and more money than has been spent by everyone in the last 500 years. And you still think it's going to go ahead? So what was the RV goals? Humanitarian projects? Don't make me laugh. Seriously. The plan is to eliminate America as the major role player, which started back in the 1970s, and the goal was to financially cripple the country, weaken and then eliminate the dollar. So essentially it has the value of a peso. Then they were going to remove the guns from the people, declare many terrorists and load people into FEMA camps and reduce 85% of the other countries who are trading with the dollar into oblivion. Why do you think the US military, Inc., sold all the American military equipment to the Asian faction? Every plane, every ship, every missile, every weapon, and are now leasing it back. Like I said, for those new to our show, our military does not belong to America. It does not operate for and by America either, and operates at the behest of the Rothschilds and Jesuit puppets, with a heavy leaning to the Zionists thrown in. So how was it done? Well, with the Rothschilds and the minions emptying all the American and government bank accounts, including the Treasury, ably supported by the Federal Reserve, there's been no money to run this country since November 2016. And they've been selling stuff off and getting Department of Defence credit vouchers since, until the Manor World Holding Trust stepped in last March. The Manor World Holding Trust has kept this country operating in a certain way since last March. Without it, it would be total bankrupt and chaos. All of that military hardware that they sold was paid for by you, the people, and just sold off to the Asian faction, all of it. Now work is still underway to get it back. The RV was a bank, corporate and cabal bailout to kickstart not humanitarian programs, forget that, but to start the 90% humanity genocide programs. Pure and simple. And anyone who thinks different at this stage, with all the information that is available, is either beyond stupid, bordering on retarded, or a Rothschild's agent or a cabal puppet. There is no other category, so take your pick. The RV was a harvesting program, pure and simple, but people fell for it for seducement purposes, a promise of free money, and we've all fell for that at some stage, particularly in times of economic downturn. But it's short-term gain and long-term pain. What is required now, for the first time ever, is short-term pain with long-term gain, as in 499 years minimum. Enough of the seducements, the false promises of the RVs, the prosperity packages, the ET packages, NESARA, GESARA, OPPT, birth certificate payouts. All of it was an illusion. Pure and simple. Designed to string us all along whilst they raped and pillaged due to the former trust holders and their ability to do any of the above has been drastically reduced and edging towards being eliminated altogether. Why do we need a wall with Mexico? The wall is to prevent the free movement of tens of thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands of humans from South America and other regions whose regions are riddled with poverty, drug-laden and war zones, being transported into private holdings, which is a polite term for concentration camps, which are not ran by the government and Trump, but ran by the Bush cartel who operate and control the Texas Rangers groups. Media didn't tell you that, did they? So what is the purpose and reasons for the wall? Well, the purpose is to prevent mercenaries, FARC guerrillas, MS-13, plus a load of Oman and Saudi Arabia mercenaries which came in through Venezuela. Acronym-led groups created by our own agencies, drug gangs, gangs intent on and that live for violence, which are later used to do the dirty work of others in a plea bargain. In other words, we won't give you jail, you go and eliminate, for argument's sake, Kim. They've tried many times. The wall is to stop the sex trade and trafficking, child trafficking, the child porn industry, human slavery selling, or the worst aspects of this is people are being used for snuff movies, dissecting them live or otherwise for organ harvesting, which are then sold to the hospitals for between $90,000 and $225,000, depending on which organ. Extracting children's adrenal glands for the Kool-Aid juice that the elites drink that helps them with life longevity. And if you think that lot is bad enough, think again. The worst thing, depending on your perspective, is that some of the children and people are being used for food. Yes, you heard that correctly. These people are beyond sick. The wall will go down deep enough to encounter any tunnels underneath, and the wall is expected to cost roughly $35 billion in total. The Manor World Holding Trust has agreed to underwrite and pay that whole amount. It's already agreed. So what has been coming in are caravans of death. And the latest one Trump alluded to recently was to be used in various forms. Like I said, it contains mercenary groups that are being funneled in to Venezuela and onto these caravans, all arranged for by Obama and his Muslim Brotherhood group, lesser known as the Langley 3 group. Also involved is Langley 2, which is the Nazis' NATO elements. Still think we don't need a wall? What about all the children? I think we do.
Well,
hi all and welcome back. For those that are new and don't know, I mentioned the children. That song was about the children. 900,000 children in America go missing permanently every year. Some of those things I described on why we're building the wall is a large proportion of that. Ritual sacrifices. These people are beyond sick, and we have to get real about it. And we have to get knowledgeable about it also. The regular members of THI are very knowledgeable, and any new members joining, they will help you, because it's likely way beyond what you've heard outside of here. Now, the spin machine has started on the Manor World Holding Trust. For those of you new, this show is connected to the Manor World Holding Trust, and we'll give a description of it during this piece or after this piece. And no longer now can they deny it, like the cabal, the mainstream media, and most of the alternative media have done for the last 3 years. So now they go on to the next stage of trashing it with false accusations about what the trust is, claims that they own it all when they own jack shit, and allegations about the trustee holder, Kim Go-Eun. Neither will fly. And we want to thank Mr. Wanta and his criminal globalist NATO Rothschild CIA agent Robert David Steele for bringing it into the light. This was the response today from Kim, who is the trustee of Manor World Holding Trust, in relation to Leo Wanta and his fake claims. Firstly, the US Treasury, also referred to as USA Treasury, was not a government organisation. It was a deep state-controlled shell company which went defunct in 2014. The US Treasury was controlled by the same people as the Federal Reserve, and that itself is also now defunct. As we all know, the Federal Reserve private influence over the Republic/US government is almost now defunct thanks to President Donald Trump and his supporters. This has the deep state reeling, which is why Mr. Steele and Mr. Wanta, both of the deep state UN organisations, have participated in the overthrow of the former USSR, installing the Red Dragon, who is a Russian-Austrian man, into power. The Red Dragon is not Asian, but is a Russian who assisted in the divide of state-owned companies of the USSR into the private sector, establishing the deep state of Russia for the small price of 10% of all the profits. This Red Dragon man is part of the Dragon Organization, which is also the deep state of America. Although Mr. Wanta may have participated in perpetuating the globalist agenda under Reagan by stealing trillions of dollars under the advice of the United Nations and the Dragon families, he, Mr. Wanta, was not the owner of the funds. Mr. Wanta was a CIA agent sent to do a job. He referenced the Argo Trust, which was formed by much the same way during the fall of the Shah of Iran, and these funds were stolen by other CIA agents working for the Bush-Cheney, which at the time was the Black Dragon head of North America. Bush Sr. arranged for what today we call Langley 2, or Farm 2, or Farm 41. A group of highly trained CIA contractors and agents who reported directly to the Black Dragon at the time when Bush Sr. was around, which is who Mr. Wanta worked for, Bush Sr. He essentially stole from funds from the USSR and gave them to Bush Sr., who then put them into an off-ledger account he never thought he would lose control over. The Black Dragon Organization, for those who do not know, is half run by the Chinese Tang family and half by Americans. Bush Sr. held the position, then Cheney, then Eric Prince, Blackwater man, some Air Force general for a brief period of time, and now, as of last weekend, it's Pelosi. The Black Dragon, Red Dragon, Green Dragon, Golden Dragon, Blue Dragon all report to the Pindar, who currently is John von Wright, and to the Rothschilds. Was Mr. Wanta told a fairy tale that these funds he stole would be used to help America? Probably. But they were never his funds, never under his name, and never intended to help America or its people, but only to perpetuate the globalist deep state agenda. This deep state, global deep state, stole funds, raped countries, killed presidents, all in the name of controlling resources of the planet. The party who sat 5 levels above the Pindar was always in control, sending his little minions to do his bidding. His agenda? To control all the world's in-ground resources. Did he succeed? Yes. By 2007, he pretty much had everything. Then he cut the dragons off from his fully controlled money supply. Wanta was just a cog in the wheel, as was Bush, as was all the rest of the deep state actors we have all come to know and hate. The Department of United States Treasury is a government department, not in any way affiliated with the US Treasury. Mr. Thomas Melville, who Mr. Wanta referenced, does not work for the Department of the United States Treasury, nor the US Treasury. He is a person with some government connections who a few years ago tried to help Mr. Wanta, and Mr. Melville, through Ms. Goguin, was shown accounts Leo Wanta claimed to control with the full intelligence file attached. He then understood everything Wanta was told, and he was being told a lie. Hence the message that went to Mr. Leo Wanta. To this very day, the Black Dragon continues to try and get hold of the funds stolen during the Cold War, and they are all being blocked. Again, Wanta was just a CIA agent who participated in stealing for the globalist agenda. You know, it's beyond a joke, really. His life, as he reports it, is true. He was kidnapped. Why? Because he was one of the hundreds of agents that participated in overthrowing the USSR. No other reason. The Argo Trust was all about everything they stole from Iran. Same cookie-cutter plan, different location. This globalist agenda has been going on for a very long time in a very intricate plan, not written by any dragon, but written by the master. Regular THI members will know who I'm referring to by that. The party in control, who died in 2016, the master, Mr. M. That is where the Manor World Holding Trust and Miss Goguin came in. She took over for him in that high seat above the Pindar and any dragon family. It took 4 years from the time she managed to obtain the position to sort out exactly what had happened, who was involved, and also how to fix it. She developed a plan of her own to distribute the funds back to the countries from which they originated, along with the interest and control over their own resources once again. You have many countries who have resources and have been pledged to the trust by Rothschilds and the De Beers and all these other people, Rockefellers. The trust will be given the resources back to the country where it came from, along with interest. This role is not as easy as it sounds. There are many who acted in the deep state plan, Wanta being one of millions over the years. The deep state, aka the Order, aka Rothschilds, aka Chinese elders, and its many ancillary organisations such as the Jesuits, the Templars, the Freemasons, the IRA, and others that believe this money belongs to them. Why? Because that is what they were told. It did not. It never did. Trustees is all they were. They were never owners. All of them were slaves to the master they served. They are still trying to execute on the globalist agenda, which is not possible without control over the assets, and they won't be getting those assets back. All of the assets accumulated by the deep state bad actors was sorted over a 2-year period and set for redistribution. Half to the people of the world and half to the governments of the world. This is why the deep state is fighting so hard against distribution, because once that happens, their structure is lost forever. $1 goes to the public and it's game over. They are using various means to try to acquire in-ground resources of countries such as Vietnam, Russia, Zimbabwe at this very moment. Why does this plan fail? Because they've already assigned them, all those in-ground resources, to their master's accounts, which is now run by Kim and the Man World Holding Trust. The assets will only be released to its originating country and the citizens of that country, not to globalist elites. They will not go back to any dragon, nor Rothschild, nor any of the other nefarious characters that knowingly participated in the globalist agenda. The globalist agenda is currently known as the GCR, the RV, or the Global Reset. That plan was developed by Rothschilds in order to regain control over the planet and all nations of planet Earth. However, the plan has no basis in macro nor microeconomics, and it continues to fail. Big promises made to big-name people by the Rothschilds are making these bad actors do crazy things in order to achieve a goal which does not exist. They are still continuing to erupt nations into war, kill presidents, all based on a lie which will never end in success. 4,000 people have died in the last few weeks in Zimbabwe. 10,000 or more are refugees into neighbouring countries. Why? Because the Rothschilds failed to install their stooge, Chamiza. Chamiza had flown to London many times during his campaign to meet with the Rothschilds and promised to give them all the in-ground resources of Zimbabwe in exchange for pretty papers called Zim notes. Everyone thinks they're going to revaluate on a 1-to-1 to the American dollar. Is this possible? No. Why? Because currency works on supply and demand. The assets of a nation are only one part of a currency's value. You must also meet the demand. For example, new development, new infrastructure, new production lines, which support the influx of the new currency. Any overprint of currency without a supporting reason for its issuance will result in a massive devaluation. There are currently around 7 quadrillion, that's 15 zeros, of Zim notes held by various people in the world, all on the promise it will revaluate. How could Zimbabwe, a country whose landmass isn't even half the size of the United States, possibly generate $7 quadrillion in new business? The answer is it cannot. The gross domestic product, known as the GDP of the entire planet per year, is 114 trillion. That's 114 followed by 12 zeros. And they have 7 quadrillion in Zim notes. These people are beyond stupid. So if Zimbabwe pledged all of its in-ground resources to Rothschilds, there is no way the Zim would ever value at 1-to-1 with the US dollar with 7 quadrillion in circulation. The currency would crash, and so would the world with it. Yet the Zimbabwe generals were made big promises of becoming trillionaires, and they are killing citizens and attempting to kill the current president based on these promises by a bunch of has-beens. The solution in Zimbabwe is simple: create a brand new currency based on real numbers, not fake currencies printed by the Rothschilds and the De La Rue Company. So forget the old Zim note and rebuild. And it's going to take the current president, the generals, the ministries and the people to make that happen. It will be a slow process if they can all work together. But if they do, they will be an independent nation based on the hard work of its own people. They can do it, but not when they are not standing together. Not by transferring ownership to the deep state, but by their own hands and good business practices. The same in the United States, the Republic. Why did Obama try to reassign all of the in-ground assets of America to the Dragons? Why did Hillary Clinton, both Hillary and Bill, same reason as above in Zimbabwe, try to reassign all of America's in-ground resources to these dragon groups? You see, the plan never changes. It's always the same. You just change the location and it's rinse and repeat. So who is Mr. Wanta? A patriotic man who thought he was doing a job for the President of the United States by taking money from another nation to support America. But who was he really? Just one of a million cogs in the deep state wheel, stealing from other nations and donating it to the deep state for global control. Sorry, Mr. Wanta, but that's the truth, and that is the reality. As for Mr. Melville, he had the privilege to see all of the knowledge firsthand, and when he figured it all out, he called Mr. Wanta to tell him what happened. Not as an employee of the US Treasury, nor the Department of Treasury, but as a patriotic citizen. Ms. Goguin didn't steal anything, or Kogan, as Wanta calls her. She obtained a position far above Wanta's comprehension that has full access to all of the plans and the agendas of her predecessor, and decided to reverse the course of history by using the system created by her predecessor. And since Mr. Wanta was so gracious to share Mr. Melville's phone number, a man he claims in his interview works for a government entity who intended to help him with the entire world, I will choose to share Mr. Wanta's phone number with all of you so you can all call him with your questions personally, and his number is 470-595-57 470 595 5711, or you can email him at vikinginternational.usa@gmail.com. Viking International, 6 kings. Oh my. Hope you like that, Mr. Wanter, so you can all bombard him. A message from Kim. Mr. Wanter, your associate, Miss Kay Higgins, phoned Mr. Melville and asked him for release codes and claimed you were sitting there with Mr. Trump at the time. That was a complete and utter lie. You were not. You're just not. So please stop trying to make yourself out seem like you are actually doing something other than talking shit on the internet about something you know very little about. My response was, if you have an account number, I will grant access to the Department of Treasury, President Trump, or whomever you want to the off-ledger system. And if your name is anywhere on there, I will give you a release code and you can have what's in the fund. Sadly, no account exists. To Mr. Kennedy, who posted this article, you have zero facts to support what you wrote here, and you claim journalistic credit for this article. If you write one more article about Mr. Melville, the Manor World Holding Trust, or Kim Go-Ewan, with no proof of anything you state, prepare for a lawsuit, and it will be heavy. As everything you wrote is hearsay from a cranky old man that was used by the deep state, and he's got a bit pissy about it. Mr. Wanter, we won't get fooled again, lad. Hi all and welcome back. No, we won't be fooled again, Mr. Wanter. And this show has said for a long time about the role Robert David Steele is playing in the alt media. He may espouse humanitarian things and all that rubbish, but it's all fake. He's in with Mr. Wanter. Why? Because he came from the same group is why. Involved in NATO, involved in Langley 2, and involved with the Rothschilds. Pure and simple. So people can make your own choice. But Mr. Wanter just outed Robert David Steele, something that this show has been saying for near 2 years now, maybe longer. Another snake out of the alt media. Well, this will be the final piece tonight. It's kind of a summary of what's going on, and also an introduction to the hundreds of new listeners. We added 50 to the Facebook just today alone. We are in a full-scale war now. There's no ifs or buts anymore. And it will and does involve most countries around the world, not just America. America is the focus as the cabal are trying to bring it down, and in doing so will collapse all the other countries as well. There are 186 countries that are in some way tied to the now defunct and operating without a license Federal Reserve and also its note. So you bring America down financially and the rest of the world will go with it. Those new to this show need to know this group and the show works alongside the real trust, the Manor World Holding Trust, that holds all of the world's assets, including the Federal Reserve and all of its banks, Washington DC, the Crown of England, and much more. You'll hear a lot more about the Manor World Holding Trust in the near future. probably further agency trashing pieces. I would advise to ignore it, as I say bring it on, as it gets it more publicity, which they've been denying for the last 3 years. Now, Kim and the people, myself and the people in the trust, have largely worked in the background for the last 4 to 5 years. And in the last 2 months, the trust has eliminated all American debt to China and also wiped out the country's debt to the Federal Reserve, all 20 trillion of it. They will tell you that it still exists. The reality is it doesn't. Like the Fed itself, it's all an illusion now. We have also worked on shutting down the Federal Reserve Collection Agency, known as the IRS, and put forward a proposal that eliminates the illegal taxing on your wages, known as income tax, which is actually not a tax. It is actually a tribute to the Crown, aka England, and you all thought you got independence. Another lie. And replace the income tax with a 10% spending tax that applies to everybody. This bill, known as HR 25, was published on the House or Senate or Congress website on January the 3rd, and it's time for all Americans to support that bill. The trust also declared America sovereign on January the 27th, 2018. The trust has the ability or power to introduce or create sovereign nations, which used to be part of a sub-sovereign to the master sovereign, which was the predecessor to Kim. Kim doesn't want the countries to be sub-sovereign. She wants them all to be equal. So the sovereignty, American sovereignty, would free it from the Crown of England, which is run by the Rothschilds, not the Queen of England, although the sovereignty has yet to be implemented. The reason being is the clearing of the decks has to take place first, and that continues at a pace. Now, the trust itself, or should I say what was 6,500 trusts, were taken over by the trustee Kim. And for those new who will do a search, please search for her. Please ignore the ridiculous cabal attempts to slander her back in 2013 or 14 on the so-called rip-off report. It's all BS. Following several breaches of contract by the former trustees and misuse of the trust funds, also by the former trustees, which included the likes of Nelson Mandela, Gaddafi, Sukarno, and the M1 collateral account related Ferdinand Marcos. None of them gave any money back to the people. Marcos held stolen gold belonging to the trust, plus the fact that the contracts had ended for all the former trustees. Kim took over her predecessor back in the 2012-13 time, and all 6,500 trusts have now been rolled into the one trust under the name of Manor World Holding Trust. The only trustee is Kim Ko-Guen, no matter who else claims otherwise. A lot of the various bunkers or vaults mentioned around the internet in Indonesia and other places all actually belong to the trust, some of which was stolen from various countries by the criminal elite harvesters. All gold and other resources have been mapped and recorded, and all the assets stolen from each country will be returned to them with interest So diamonds that are stored there will go back to the country of origin. A lot of the gold was stolen from Russia, and also the Slavic Aryan countries will also be subsequently returned to them. Smelting it down to cover tracks will not work. The quantum system, the only real quantum system held by the Trust, is far too advanced to render that type of operation mute. All the relevant vaults and bunkers were emptied around 4 to 5 years ago, leaving behind some documents and other minor trinkets only. They have been moved into a 100% safe location that is not accessible by anybody except the 4 to 5 people in total on this planet with the right intent, DNA and/or frequency. Attempting to access those vaults will result in death for all others. The predecessor of the Trust and all the other trustees had no interest at all in humanity, including the infamous Chinese elders. They held the Trust for thousands of years. It was actually the Chinese elders who gave the Rothschilds their start in 1512 with a $20 million donation out of the Trust. Did the Rothschilds pay it back? No. And they used the proceeds out of the Trust, which is the people's money, not theirs, to build their New World Order based empire, with the sole reason of harvesting all the world's resources and its people as well via the Agenda 21 and 30 programs. Many people will have heard of the 90% reduction of humanity, but unbeknown to the 10%, they were to be eliminated also after stage 1. I can assure you that program will no longer be viable. There have been several claims on the internet over the past decade of all kinds of accounts for humanitarian projects, prosperity packages, debt elimination, and the list goes on. None of them are based in reality. The Saint Germain Trust doesn't exist. I personally have seen all 6,500 trusts, including all the assets contained within each one, and not one of them contained Saint Germain. NESARA, GESARA doesn't exist. Neil Keenan and the collateral accounts was a misguided illusion to steal the real trust accounts by the Chinese elders. Whether Neil was aware of that or not, that is the fact. Not only the Chinese elders, but the Asian faction and also the Rothschilds. Now, as we stated before, the RVGCR was the biggest scam ever and will never take place. As you heard before, it's physically impossible to undertake it or support it with sufficient assets, which is required to implement it. You would need 4 planets worth of assets to support it. As we said earlier, it was formulated by Bush Sr. et al. Essentially steal a load of worthless currencies like dinars, zims and dongs, print up a load of extra more done by the De La Rue printing company, which is owned by the Rothschilds, and then they used the corrupt portions of the alternative community platforms to sell it to the public. So in essence, the public has funded them to keep going. They had no money. They've had no money since 2009. They've just taken ours. And the reason they've had no money since 2009 was the Federal Reserve was blocked from printing any more notes by the trust. Again, for those new, the alt media is ran by rogue elements out of Langley, the NSA, and so-called universities dotted around the country. And many of your bigger names you all follow outside of this group are paid agents of them. I wish I was wrong on that. I really wish I was wrong on that. But I know 100% that I'm not. For those who don't know, cryptos, blockchains and bitcoins, etc. are all the same scam, no matter who tells you different. Sell unvalued paper or fresher computer tokens for your real money. It's exactly the same as the dinars and the zims. Then they spin you a tale. It will make you hundreds, thousands or millions of dollars on it. But they've collected all the money and ran. And then they leave internet scammers or badly duped alt media to keep you all on tenterhooks of it's all happening, it's coming tomorrow. We have to get real. It's not. Now, I appreciate it's not what many people want to hear, but with this show, we will not be telling you what you want to hear based on illusions. It will tell you what you need to hear based as near to the truth as possible. We've had enough bullshit over the last decade on the alt media. This host and show will not be adding to it. So the RV GTR is essentially about revaluating all the world's currencies, according to the narrative anyway. And yet in December, the corrupt, bankrupt and now defunct IMF, who are run by the same clowns who brought you all of the above just addressed. And for an added note, the trust declared the IMF, the World Bank and the UN bankrupt. Why? Because they're all owned by the trust. They were all siphoned off and harvested into the trust by Kim's predecessor. Those organisations now, the IMF, World Bank and the UN, are operating now at the request of the Rothschilds factions. But the IMF told 134 countries, including the UK, to scrap all of their currencies and implement cryptocurrencies, which tells you, A, the crypto peddling people who believed cryptos was getting around the cabal was a complete illusion, and B, it tells you they no longer have control over the world's currencies. If they had control, they wouldn't be talking about scrapping it. And the reason they don't have control is the manner World Holding Trust has control of every single currency. It's all owed to the trust. Many new will be thinking of how the trust came to own so much. We think the same way. The trust, unbeknown to all the Illuminati, which no longer exists for at least a decade, it's now the factions, the cabal and the deep state levels, was just collecting all our resources. These ignorant and in some cases utterly retarded minions did all the donkey work for them, and in return got lots of pieces of paper with numbers on them, making them rich. But the main trustee cared not for valueless pieces of paper. They meant nothing to him. He created it. Pieces of paper while he collected precious gold, precious diamonds, oil, and all the other resources. And he handed it out to the greedy, gullible trustees and their minions like confetti. Essentially, here, have your bits of paper, whilst he and others collected all the real assets of resources, the people, and also the people's souls. Yes, you heard that right. The most valuable asset on the planet, the human souls and their life force energy, which these people traded for pieces of paper. That has now stopped. The Manor World Holding Trust and its trustee is committed 100% to returning all the funds, the assets, the buildings, the resources and the lands back to the countries and its people. All of it was stolen by the former trustee holder and his band of minions who were largely unaware of the big plans. In essence, those people were harvesting agents. For those new to this show, even the most detailed researchers on the internet who have uncovered what we all call the cabal were only covering the bottom 25 to 30% maximum of the full control system. No matter what name you throw out, they were in the bottom 30%. Those regular in THI know who the others are, or in some cases were. But for this show, I will not be referencing them. But should you choose to go deeper and find out, we have a plethora of must-listen to shows on the thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org website, listed under podcasts. Manor World Holding Trust has what kept America running for the past 2 years. America's not had a real budget since the 1970s. We are currently keeping the basics of the government running in conjunction with the request of Mr. Trump. Manor World Holding Trust is not just working with the American president, but we have spoken to many world leaders at various times, some more than others. You will see a pattern of those we have spoken to as those countries come under attack from the cabal via fake terrorist groups, as all of them are cabal funded by the cabal. Mercenary groups like Blackwater, the IMF, World Bank, UN, so-called peacekeepers, they're not peacekeepers by any stretch of the imagination, or the criminal organisation known as the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization have created, administered and dispersed most, if not all, the disease globally, deliberately via vaccines, toxic poisons or chemicals. The overview of what the Manor World Holding Trust is about to unveil once the cabal blocks are removed on getting the funding to the people is 50% will go to the countries having proven they can protect the funds and also removed rogue elements intent on stealing it, and 50% to the people who fund their own projects, innovations and programs of their choice. If you think this is here to enrich you or your group, please go away. We will be funding all kinds of ideas supported by the people, based and for the benefit of the all, not the one. That is replicating the cabal. Every cabal business, without the injection of funds stolen from the trust, have or will fail. We're not about to replicate that. So if you have big ideas about becoming the next Bill Gates or Bezos with your company or group, this group will not entertain you. It's parasitic behaviour and creates a new slavery system. This group will not be promoting or tolerating those systems. This is about us all being prosperous in the basic needs of life, like clean water, nutritional food, shelter, clothing and energy. Many of us in the West will complain of poverty or having less, but most of us in the Western world have most, if not all, of those basics. 1.3 billion in this world still don't have electricity. 40% with no clean water or sanitation. 40 to 60% of the world's population don't have 2 to 3 meals per day. And many don't have proper homes. So the mantra for we the people has to be need, not greed. For every millionaire, it creates tens of thousands who have nothing. Earning over $250,000 a year creates that vacuum. You don't need $250,000 a year to live a comfortable life. Essentially, you are flaunting a lavish lifestyle while so many don't even have the basics. Please stop and think on that. Excessive earnings are service to self. We have to go to service to others, or we will fail, just like the cabal have. They are like the Ouroboros. If you keep eating your own tail, eventually you will have nothing left to chew. For those new asking how much Kim or I earn currently, Kim relies on her partner and gets zero for all her work, 18 hours a day, out of the trust. And I rely on Patreon donations and also earn $0 out of the trust. It won't change, but we can get dollars out of the trust. We'll get what we need. If we are going to succeed, everyone needs a change of mindset. The end of the comparative and ultra-competitive thinking of status based on your home, car, handbag, shoes or iPhone. It's all shallow and narrow-minded thinking, and replace it with a caring, sharing with all people in your own communities, making sure everyone has the basic needs, everyone supports each other. This is how the cabal have trampled all over us. We've not supported each other. We are divided on so many aspects of society, and that has to change. The cabal prospered because we allowed it. We are all responsible for the world's ills, whether you like that fact or not. It is the truth of the matter. We didn't care enough of what was going on elsewhere. Most people are not interested in the fact that 49,000 children per day die. Yes, you heard that right. 22,000 due to sex or labour slavery, adrenochrome, body part harvesting or food. And 27,000 per day to malnutrition related disease. People never said nothing that the murderous USA Inc. military, operated not by the American government, we don't have one, but the Rothschilds group have invaded, looted, raped and pillaged and destroyed 81 countries since World War II. And the people said nothing. Or the billions of people living in poverty around the world, including 46 million in the so-called richest country in the world, America. I could go on all night with what we have all ignored. We too easily went along with their plans, and in many cases we implemented many of them ourselves. That has to stop. A dead Iraqi is just as important as a dead American. It's one of us, no matter what the corrupt media have told you otherwise, with their version of his story, not ours. Manor World Holding Trust is working with real American patriots currently. We have engaged the corrupt elements as well to try and garner a deal for them to step down. They won't. These people are psychopaths. But we have been successful in getting many of their minions to step down, and that will be a major plus as we work through this barrage of evil. The key was teaching them what is real and what is not via this show and the many hundreds of calls Kim has had with all the world leaders. We have plans and ideas to work on 489 different aspects of life that needs revolutionising, and we will continue to do so until it's complete. We cannot do this on our own, and this will require the participation of everyone on this planet to turn it back into the jewel it should be. We will not do that fighting or competing with each other. We just won't. We won't do it displaying greed or disregard for your fellow man. This is a final opportunity to get this planet and its people into an adult-based, knowledgeable, peaceful species with an abundance of the basics of life, which will then allow us all to be the creators we all are. We will have more shows and updates when the time is called for them. It may not go Thursday to Thursday now. So stay tuned to the Facebook and the MeWe pages. Enjoy the holiday on Monday, as Tuesday may well get interesting. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. You are free to share far and wide. Bye for now.